Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's Daily Global Show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to convene this global conversation around various aspects of the pandemic, the elections, and so much more. Today's episode number 237 in 237 days of lockdown in New York City. It's also the night before the elections in the United States. And we needed a very special guest, and we have that for you tonight. Our guest, a day before the election, is one of the most influential lawyers and people in DC. Robert Barnett is our guest. He has represented a wide variety of political and media figures, including Hillary and Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and Curry Wolf Blitzer, among many others. He served as a practice debate opponent for many Democratic presidential and vice presidential candidates. He has worked with so many folks who understand and shape DC and American politics in ways that very few people do. We are going to meet Mr. Barnett in just a minute. In the meantime, we are going to have him share this with his friends and family, as we would love for you to share with your friends and family. They can watch live or later. We're on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. Hi, everybody. I'm Sree. Thank you so much for being here. I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism, and just delighted to be here with all of you, and so honored that Robert Barnett would spend election eve here with us. I'm also the co-founder of Digimentors, a social, digital, and virtual events consulting company. And we work on virtual events and conferences and talk shows. We've done events for 50 people and events for 100,000 people. We bet your event is somewhere between those two numbers. So if you haven't seen us before here, we've had now 237 episodes, more than 1 million viewers, and we've had more than 420 guests. And we are archived on youtube.com/Sreenet, and we're in partnership with Scroll Global and Scroll.in. Big thanks to our sponsors and big thanks to our producers, Rose Horowitz at Rose Horowitz 31 and Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon. So right now, please tag your friends. They can watch live or later. Please ask your questions of Mr. Barnett, who will share what he has learned and what he has been doing in so many years of the highest levels of work in Washington, D.C. So I'm ready to meet him, and I know you are too. So everyone, please say hello to Robert Barnett. Hello, sir.
Hello, Sree. Nice to see you. I must say I'm the visiting professor of nothing, but I'm glad to be visiting with you.
Very kind. Thank you. My first question, even though I have so many other things to ask you, how are you? Where are you? And how is your family handling the pandemic? How have you done through all of this?
Very nice of you to ask. Our law firm is shuttered, as just about every law firm is. We're all working from home, doing our business, very busy. Going to the office a couple times a day. It's a couple times a week, I'm sorry. It's a ghost town, never see anybody, but it helps me to be able to print and get some files. Working from home, as you can see behind me, keeping business alive. My daughter, son-in-law, and 3 fabulous, wonderful, loved grandchildren are all in New York, in school, in person. We got to spend a couple distinct months with them during the summer, which was a real blessing. My wife's also working from home, and we're just waiting for the vaccine.
Yeah, I mean, we all are, but we're just glad to hear your family's doing okay. I'm in New York, so I'm sure, like the rest of the world, you watched as New York became the epicenter of the virus in the U.S., and now it has spread to other places. And New York has done pretty well, though there's still obviously too many people sick. And
a lot of thanks goes to my client and good friend, Governor Andrew Cuomo, who jumped on it and found a way to get 20 million New Yorkers to go in the same direction. And knock on wood, it's been pretty good. And I just hope it can stay that way for the sake of you and everybody else in that great city.
Well, thank you. And thank you to Governor Cuomo as well. We will be talking about many of your clients. We should have people know it is not name dropping when Robert Barnett does it, because these are people he works with. For the rest of us, it would be name dropping. This is what happens when you have worked in Washington as you have for so many years, and have worked at the highest levels with people in and out of government on both sides of the aisle. So let's give people a little bit of a sense of some of that work and the journey that you've had, the incredible journey you've had.
Sure. Grew up in Waukegan, Illinois, on Lake Michigan, halfway between Chicago and Milwaukee. Went to the University of Wisconsin for undergrad, where I met my wife, and went to the University of Chicago Law School. I then had the fabulous opportunity of clerking for Judge John Minor Wisdom on the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit in New Orleans. Then I had the great honor of clerking for Justice Byron White at the U.S. Supreme Court. I then spent 2 years working for then Senator Walter Mondale in the Senate as one of his legislative assistants. And then long ago, in 1975, joined my law firm, where I've been ever since, although I've diverted to do various things during those many years. But I've been practicing law at the firm of Williams & Connolly in Washington since 1975, with a whole bunch of wonderful partners and associates and staff who have helped me and everybody else get through this difficult time in the last 8 months.
Thank you for that very quick journey through your career. Tell us about the first time you got involved with helping a presidential candidate.
Sure. Well, as I said, I worked for Walter Mondale in the Senate and went to the firm in 75. In 76, Jimmy Carter picked Walter Mondale to be his running mate as vice president. And just about all of us who had worked for him over the years left our jobs, moved to Atlanta, where the campaign was based, and became for 2.5 months the Mondale campaign. There hadn't been debates since 60, Nixon, Kennedy. And for some reason in 76, they decided to resurrect them. And after 16-year hiatus, there were presidential debates. And for the first time ever, there was a vice presidential debate. And I helped prepare Walter Mondale for his debate with then Senator Bob Dole, which was the first vice presidential debate. During that period, I had the great fortune to put whatever skills I had about debating and advocacy and public speaking to work. And ever since then, I've done 10 cycles, worked on debates in 10 cycles since 1976. But the first one was with Walter Mondale back long ago.
And that must have been, just each time you do these, you must learn a lot as you proceed from one to another. Tell us about some of the highlights, please.
Yeah, well, in 80, we were going to do it again, but for some reason, long lost in history, there was no vice presidential debate. In 84, when Walter Mondale was the presidential candidate and picked Geraldine Ferraro as his running mate, the late Ann Wexler and I were asked to run her debate prep team, and we prepared her for her debate with George Herbert Walker Bush. And for the first time, I played the Republican in the rehearsals. I played Bush in the Ferraro rehearsals in 84. 88, helped prepare Michael Dukakis for his debate with Bush 41 and played Bush 41 in those rehearsals. 92, had the experience of a lifetime and debated Bill Clinton about 20 sometimes as Bush 41. The late Mike Sinar from Oklahoma played Ross Perot. You remember there were 3 that time around. 96, I was recused because my wife was the CBS White House correspondent. 2000, I played Cheney and helped prepare Lieberman. 2004, played Cheney and helped prepare Edwards. 2008, I worked on 23 debates in the primaries, helping Hillary, playing everyone from Obama to Biden to Richardson to Dodd, and the list goes on and on. And when she dropped out, I helped with the team that prepared Barack Obama for his debates in 08. In 12, I worked on the Obama team again. In 16, played Bernie in all the 9 primary debate rehearsals, and then helped prepare Hillary for her debates in 2016 with then candidate Donald Trump. So it's been a long history of playing a lot of people and preparing a lot of people, and each one is different, each one's exciting, each one's important.
What a couple of tips that you learned for yourself that made you better and better at this?
For myself, well, it's
Yeah.
not important about me. It's important about the
But no, but
candidate.
therefore made you more useful and helpful to your
Well,
client.
you come away with some lessons. One lesson is that you design a process that helps the candidate, not that helps the staff, and not that pleases the press, but every candidate is different. With Jerry Ferraro, she was a 3-term congresswoman from Queens, and with Bill Clinton, he'd done all sorts of primary debates. Hillary, obviously, in 16 had run for president in 08. So you design a process that works, and you try to anticipate not so much the exact questions, but the question areas, the topics, if you will, so you can prepare for them. You prepare for every eventuality. The real test is when your candidate walks off the stage, if he or she says, well, I didn't hear anything on there that you hadn't said to me before. And that's the real reward. If that can happen, you know you've done your job.
And in the process, do you find that candidates are especially nervous, or they really like the rehearsal part, or do they kind of hit their stride on their debate? Do you have to kind of make sure they don't peak too early?
Well, every candidate's different. There's no generalizing. As a general principle, as the surrogate, playing the role of the surrogate, you just want to pound the crap out of your candidate early on to get him or her to be attentive to the necessity of preparation. And then let us say as time goes on, you ease off and they get better, and doggone it if you don't lose bad that night before the debate.
I understand that. Now we're talking about debates, but obviously everyone wants to talk to you about the election day tomorrow, election season, as some people have been calling it. But I do want to ask you, how did you prepare Hillary Clinton for Donald Trump?
Well, I didn't play Trump. I was just part of the team
Right.
that prepared. We tried to practice for the strange and wonderful ways that he presents himself, and have her ready for what came. Every single poll, not the call-ins, but the real polls, found that she won all 3 debates. And I think that any fair-minded person felt she did. It didn't ultimately matter because the Electoral College got in the way, but we felt very good about those debates and how she performed. We felt we were prepared. We felt we anticipated his behavior. And again, the neutral polls, the scientific polls, proved that out, and we were pleased. But unfortunately, we're not running a campaign for Hillary's second term. I wish we were.
And that brings us to tomorrow. How are you feeling? What are you thinking about? Where you have friends, obviously, who are very invested in both sides of your friends and clients in both sides of various battles at the election. So talk about tomorrow, please. And
Sure. Well, I'm cautiously optimistic for Biden. I know full well that there are Trump paths to victory. Some miscellaneous thoughts. Traditionally, the early voting, the mail-in voting, is overwhelmingly Democratic. I think that the numbers have been humongous. Someone just told me that we're over 90 million early votes. If that's true, and if patterns hold, that should be very good for Biden. Traditionally, Republicans are stronger on day of, and we'll have to see if the day of somehow either comes close to or overcomes what probably is a Democratic edge. That's one concern. The second concern you have is whether the African American electorate will turn out for Biden. I hope they will. Obviously, there was a fall off from Obama to Hillary Clinton. That's to be expected. The question is, what will it be this time? We don't know. I have concern about the Latino vote. I think that in places like Florida, for instance, can't generalize, but the Cuban Americans and to some degree the Venezuelan Americans seem to be somehow taken with Trump in a way that's hard to understand. But there you go. And of course, that vote is critically important in Texas and Arizona, Colorado, and the list goes on and on. So we don't know. I think that the number one issue by anybody's measure is the virus. And it's awfully hard to see how fair-minded people buy into the notion that Trump is selling that we've turned the corner. we have not turned the corner. I regard it as significant that just in the last few minutes, Deborah Birx, who has been part of the task force, came out strongly against what the president has been saying. That took a lot of courage and is a very important step in this process. So the number one issue is an issue that strongly favors Joe Biden, who has a plan, and I think everybody thinks we'll look to scientists, not to mythology. So those are some random thoughts. Personally, I don't think we'll know the result tomorrow. There are, I believe, 16 states that allow ballots postmarked up till election day to be counted. Those might not come in for a few days. There are 10 states, I believe, that don't start counting the early vote until tomorrow. Given the numbers that have been racked up on the board, that could take a while. So unless it's a blue wave, and what do I mean by that? Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. If you see those go Biden's way, that's probably a blue wave. If they don't, then you have to see if Joe Biden can pick off an Arizona, an Iowa, the states. He's got to stay strong in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. If it's close, I think it's highly likely that Pennsylvania will once again be the key. A lot will play out over the next 24 hours. And as I say, I don't personally think we'll know tomorrow night. I hope we do.
For folks who are still trying to figure out what exactly has been happening in the last few days. By the way, we want to hold up that mug again, please. Tell us.
This is my oldest grandson, Teddy. I also have a mug for Connor, and I also have a mug for Blair. They're my treasured and precious grandchildren.
Awesome, and I hope they get to see that you are showing them off on some of these calls that you're doing.
You got to send me a link. So
we'll send you a photograph with that.
Send me a photo with that.
One thing that that I presume your day is like one Zoom call after another, just meetings and talks and client work.
Well, here, do I have it here? No, I don't have it with me. Sure. Today I had 14 separate scheduled calls of one kind or another. That's you can't anymore do what you usually did, which is call somebody up and leave a message. There are no offices. There are no assistants taking messages. People aren't necessarily everybody having their calls forwarded. Some people listen to voicemail, some don't. So you really have to schedule calls in my world, which is an added craziness and results in a long day. But I have a lot to say grace over and a lot of wonderful clients who continue to be my clients during this period. And I hope I've been able to serve them well.
Well, you certainly have. And we'll talk about that in, by the way, my colleague Neil is surprised about 14 separate calls that you had scheduled today. We're going to look at some of these comments coming in from all over the world. People are commenting here.
I hope we're going to hear from India.
I'm sure. Now it's an hour later in India, so that'll be great as well. Jonathan's watching from the East Village, and he has watched 237 episodes in a row. My colleague Neil Parek's watching from Springfield, Virginia.
I've been there.
Yeah. And Sheena says, hi, Bob. Sheena, Rhodes' former chief
Sheena, I remember Sheena well. Hello, Sheena. Nice to be in touch with you. I hope you're well.
And Sheena was my student at Columbia Journalism School.
That's really? That's
how small the world is. So hi, Sheena. Great to see you too.
Hello, Sheena.
Doug is watching from California. Thanks for being a source of stability during these crazy days.
Thank you, Doug.
And Pradnya says hello from Silver Spring, Maryland.
You're nearby, Pradnya. Hello.
Yeah, and Jonathan loves the books stacked on the steps. Are those all literary clients or some of them?
Not every one of them, but most of them are. Yeah, most of them are clients, and it's a great place to store books on the way up the stairs.
And Charles and Mary Cunnan Carroll are watching from New Jersey.
Hello, Charles.
They're good friends and also sponsors of the show. He's the author of The Inventor in You, the step-by-step guide to your first invention. He's made more than 80 patents. So he's a cool guy to know and someone who really understands the world of innovation. So that's very nice. Let's keep going. Lots of people are... let's see. Do you believe that Trump didn't prepare at all for his?
No. We know in hindsight that he prepared with Giuliani and Christie because they got the virus preparing, not
Yes.
Giuliani, I guess.
Not Giuliani, but
No, he prepared in his own way.
There is some kind of gamesmanship to pretending like you're debating a master debater who's so much better than you, right? You lower the expectations. I think that happened with Al Gore and George W. Bush, where
the anticipation game, the pre-debate spin game is always part of it. Never works, never has any impact, but it's fun.
You taught us that there were some vice presidential election that did not have debates, and you were there at the very first one.
Yes.
Some really memorable debates, including this time, have been in the vice presidential rather than even the presidential.
Yes, I forgot to mention that last time around I played Pence and prepared Tim Kaine too. I forgot to mention that. Tim is a big hero of mine, and I think so highly of him, and worked with him on his debate in 2016. Forgot to mention that.
Yeah, and again, you could have been preparing. You should have been preparing now for the second Clinton Kaine administration, but that is not what happened with history. Stefan is watching from Ramsey, New Jersey. He's on pins and needles.
Me too, Stefan. Me too, Stefan.
And Ellen says a big concern is the Electoral College.
Always is. You have to, unfortunately, under our system, know that, as with Hillary, you can win by 3 million votes and still lose the Electoral College. That's why you see those maps on the cables with the possibilities of how it can play out. You got to put together that magic 270 or you are not president.
Yep, and we've certainly learned that. I think the world learned that for the first time in 2016. Ellen says Cubans are terrified of socialism, which they perceive wrongly as Biden.
Yeah, which is silliness, which is just silliness. Joe Biden is as far from being a socialist as you can possibly be. He's a solid, moderate, progressive who has a track record of 40-some years that you can look at, and the notion that the Cuban Americans have to be afraid of him or the Venezuelan Americans, they don't. He gets it, and I hope they'll see what the last 4 years have been. You know, people ask me all the time, is this like 16? And it's not like 16, because in 16, Trump was a reality show host and a licensor of his name. This time he's got 4 years of a record that people can judge, and there are people who like him, and there are people who are going to vote for him, and so be it. That's the American way. But it's not like 16. It's a completely different election. You got to look at what he's done, particularly in the last year, as this country has faced the triple crises of the virus and economic devastation that's incomprehensible, and the focus on racial injustice and social injustice. And you got to look at what he's done and make a judgment. And you can look at Joe Biden's record. I think he's proud of it. Everybody's made mistakes who's been in political life for 4 years or 40 years, but there's no real comparison, and I'm obviously biased, but that's my view.
Yeah, I can certainly understand that. Ying Chan is watching from Hong Kong. Extreme high interest in this part of the world.
Ying, my best friend in the world, all the way back to 2 years old, lives in Hong Kong, and he's an expatriate that's been there for a lot of years, and love going to Hong Kong. I'm a scratch shopper, to use the golf term. And so Hong Kong pre-pandemic was my paradise, but I hope you guys are safe there.
And of course, Hong Kong is having its own issues and everything that's going on there. I've never heard the term scratch shopper, like a scratch golfer. You're an expert shopper.
I'm a scratch shopper.
I'm going to borrow that. That's a good term. Ashok is watching from Kerala in India. Have you been?
No, I've never been to India. I mentioned to you, Sree, earlier that I have a lot of Indian heritage clients, including the wonderful Indra Nooyi, formerly of PepsiCo, the wonderful Nikki Haley, former governor of South Carolina, and others. But I've never been there. Never had the opportunity.
Well, we certainly should get you there at some point. Lori White's watching from Rhode Island. Will presidential debates become a thing of the past?
No, I don't think so, Lori. Honestly, I think once we go back to two normal people who will behave, I think they'll be still part of the process. I think they can be changed. They can be reformed. I served on a task force put together by Kathleen Hall Jameson at the Annenberg School at the University of Pennsylvania. And there were 8 Republicans, 8 Democrats. We worked together for months and put together a report, which is online at the Annenberg site. I welcome you looking at it because we're proud of it, on different things you can do. Maybe different types of moderators, not having an audience, which was implemented involuntarily this time. What's called a chess clock method, the way you decide whether third-party candidates can participate. I welcome your looking at it. I think you'll find it interesting. No, I don't think they'll be a thing of the past. I think they'll be reformed. I think they'll be changed. But I think they're an important part of the education of the electorate, which is something we should all be for.
Here's the report, and folks can just search Annenberg debate report, and it will show up. And here are some of the names. First is alphabetically, there's Bob Barnett and so many other.
Bob Bauer, who's a senior person in the Biden campaign. And each one of those names has been amazing participant in the process since '76. And we came together and reached a consensus, which still stands the test of time. It's worth looking at.
I should just point out that Ben Ginsburg is probably the foremost Republican campaign lawyer, and I presume he is on standby right now with everything that's about to happen.
Oh no! Ben is dropped out and turned against Trump and wrote a big op-ed in the Post just the other day. No, Ben's.
Oh, I missed that. So sorry. Thank you for correcting that. But he is. I mean, he's the one who helped deliver the 2000 results in Bush v. Gore.
He was very much involved. He's been in the Democrat and Republican side for years and years, but he's changed his mind. Go look up at his op-ed in the Washington Post. It's beautifully written and reasoned.
I will. Thank you. And that's an important correction.
Now, so why am I telling you this? You should be telling me this.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That should be the right way. Let's keep going here. Neil says the best debate lines were Senator Lloyd Benson's "You're no Jack Kennedy" and Admiral James Stockdale, "Who am I? Why am I here?" Also, the famous Reagan line about not using his opponent's youth and inexperience against him. What are the other?
It's interesting you say that, Neil, because the Benson thing obviously was memorable and devastating. The Stockdale thing was a disaster. That was him basically saying, "Why am I here?" Which is sort of like condemning yourself. I'm not sure I agree. It's a memorable line, but I don't think it's a useful line.
Yeah. Ellen says, "Yes, Neil, I'll never forget what Benson said. Brought the house down." Tell me, if you wouldn't mind, a line like that. So people keep that kind of in their back pocket. Do they practice that during the debate? Do they come out?
It varies. Some of it's rehearsed and practiced. Some of it's spontaneous. There had been discussion in the Benson rehearsals about the fact that Quayle often referred to Kennedy, but that, to my knowledge, or my memory, that specific line was not rehearsed. Jerry Ferraro to Bush, "Don't patronize me, Mr. Bush," that was not rehearsed. I'm sure that the Reagan line, "I will not take advantage of my opponent's youth and experience," was carefully rehearsed. Some of these things are spontaneous, some of them are rehearsed. But I'll tell you something that I think is really important. The shiny object, the funny line, the put down, it's interesting. It's gets attention among the pundits. But this time around, it's going to be different. People are not going to make their judgment on a snappy line or a comeback or a put down or what you said about fracking or this or that. They're going to vote on what their day is like as they're virtual schooling their child, as they're trying to find a job, as they, God forbid, are fighting an illness. That's what's going to decide this election. Not snappy lines, not shiny objects. This is a serious election like we've never seen. And I think that the trauma that this country has gone through is going to be a decisive, if not the decisive factor.
I'm hoping you're right, and I believe you are right. Stefan says it's sad, scary, disturbing, and unnerving that everything that has taken place over the past 4 years with Trump in office, that the race is so tight. This is why the Electoral College needs to be done away with. Popular vote or bust.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who think it's time to change the system. Hard to do, though. Very hard to do. Good thought, and there are a lot of people who agree with you, but changing fundamental underpinnings of our system has proven very difficult. And so I have little hope that it'll change anytime soon, but there's certainly a strong argument for it, and you've just made it.
Folks, I just want to remind everyone to please check out the Democratizing the Debates report from the Annenberg Working Group on Presidential Campaign Debate Reform that Mr. Barnett was part of. You will learn a lot as I'm looking forward to diving into this as well. So please just Google that and you can see. Neil says Stockdale's comment was definitely not useful. By best, I meant, oh my God, I couldn't believe he said that. I wondered whether he was serious or not. Made him look confused.
Yeah, you're right, Neil. It got played again and again during this cycle, as it always does. I think he was trying to make the point that he needed to introduce himself, but it was a strange way to do it. And he did it sort of walking around the podium a little bit. It was a classic moment. Your great researchers there will pull up the video any minute. I just know.
Yeah. While we do that, I will ask you about that election, the 92 election. How much of an impact did Ross Perot have? Would Clinton have had a chance to win without Ross Perot? There's been
let me say something about that. First of all, we're talking about debates. Let me come back to that. Sometimes they make no difference. In 92, I truly believe, and I think Bill Clinton would agree with this, that the debates, if not dispositive, were critically important to his victory. Because here was a pretty obscure Southern governor who would let us say had some issues in the primaries, and he presented himself as he was, which was able and a leader and smart. And those debates in 92, I think, again, dispositive or pretty close to it. Perot's presence was certainly a factor. It's still debated whether he took more from Clinton than he took from Bush. I don't know the answer to that. I think in the end, he probably took more from Bush than he took from Clinton, and he probably was a positive factor in Bill Clinton's victory, which was not by a majority. As you know, it was 40-some%. But we'll never know. We'll never know. You remember he was in it, then he dropped out, then he came back. Yep. And I think his presence there was probably a factor, but I guess history will have to judge that.
Do you think we'll ever have a 19% third-party candidate again?
Be tough. I think it's tough to qualify. It's tough to raise the money. It's tough to get in the debates. It's tough to get the media coverage. Anything's possible. But I think Mike Bloomberg looked at it pretty carefully before he went and dove into the Democratic side. And you can't get a guy who's more astute and analytic and able to research than him. And I'm told he concluded that it wasn't a viable path, or he probably would have done it. So I think it's tough. I don't think we'll see that again.
Yeah, I think you're right. Here is that video. Let's watch it for.
Oh, you guys are unbelievable.
Who am I? Why am I here?
That's fabulous. That's fabulous.
And
good for you for pulling that up.
Well, one of the things that
I think we got to congratulate her, Rose.
Yeah, they're working very hard behind the scenes. One of the things that I do want to also point out was that the debate format that they had in 92, I think it was the first time we had seen that kind of town hall debate, right, where George Bush looked at his watch and right, seemed sort of a little disconnected from all of this. I have a political question for you. Everything we read, we hear that George W. Bush is very unhappy with Donald Trump. What kept him from saying anything? That was kind of the final, everybody else said something basically who could have affected had an effect on the elections. Why do you think at the end he decided to stay out?
Don't know. I don't know. And I'd had to, he's a client and a friend, and I'd be doing him a disservice if I speculated. Everybody has to make their own decisions. Everybody has to decide their loyalties and their commitments and their relationships and their beliefs. And I can't honestly tell you why he didn't jump in. It's pretty well seen that he's not a great admirer of the incumbent president. I suspect that the way the incumbent president treated his brother might be part of that, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But I don't know the answer. I wouldn't want to speculate. It wouldn't be
Oh.
fair. Everybody has to make their decisions.
Fair enough. And of course, with you, it's very difficult because everybody we seem to bring up has been a client of yours. So that's part of the fun talking to you.
Not you, though. Not you. You're not a client yet.
Not yet. Rose is here. She's got, so I was just the warm-up act. The serious, tough questions are going to come from Rose. So she's here with us. Hi, Rose. Rose, can you hear us? Hi, Rose.
Fair enough. And of course, with you, it's very difficult because everybody.
Rose, hold on. Let me just. I think Rose is watching us on YouTube. I think that's what she has that there. So let me try one more time if I can hear Rose.
Rose is here. So I was just a warm up act. The serious tough question.
All right. So we'll have to bring her back in just a minute.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Fun with tech. One of the things that I do want to ask you is, what are you named some of the states that you think if there's that blue wave, it'll be an early sign. Florida is certainly one of them.
Yeah,
and
Florida, North Carolina, and Georgia, which we'll know pretty early in the evening. Not 100% we'll know, but we'll probably know. And if those three, to pick three, go with Biden, I think it's over. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but
right.
That'll be a good indicator, I think. Otherwise, we're off for, I'm afraid, some days.
One of the things we were talking about was the Electoral College. We should point out that it would take a miracle to change the Electoral College because the very states that benefit from it would have to sign away the right that they kind of this miraculous right they've been given in the first place.
Yeah, highly unlikely. Sure.
Yeah, no reason. Why would they? Right? Is how I see it. So I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetime for sure. Please talk a little bit about how you got into the literary representation business,
sure.
and then some of the incredible successes you've had with that.
Yeah, as I mentioned, in 1984, I worked with Jerry Ferraro, and even though they lost, every publisher in New York wanted her book because she was the first woman, and she was smart and funny and beautiful and terrific. And so we met with, I think, 17 publishers. I retained an agent to help because I didn't know anything about it, and we got what was then the highest advance in memoir publishing. Then when David Stockman, you'll remember him, left the Reagan administration, sure. I decided to audition to be the representative. And David hired me, and I did that book, and that made a new record of the highest paid for memoir. So I'd done one Republican, one Democrat, and I began doing the literary representation. I do the same thing that an agent does with three exceptions. First, I don't charge a commission. Agents charge a 15% commission. I charge a legal fee as a lawyer does, hourly legal fee. Second, if the client wishes, I am deeply involved in the rollout, how you present the book, what cable shows, what network shows, what podcasts, what streaming, what print, whatever you do to bring the book to the public. And third, I'm bound by legal ethics, which some agents are lawyers, most aren't. So I began doing the literary representation, and I have represented on the presidential level Clinton, Bush, and Obama, as mentioned, and 6 secretaries of state, 7 secretaries of the Treasury. I represent the best-selling fiction author in the history of the world, James Patterson, Bob Woodward, who had the amazing book Rage about the Trump administration, and prior to that, another book about the Trump administration, Fear. The Obama memoir is coming out November 17th. James Patterson has about a book a month. He does a lot of nonfiction now, also some middle school and some children's books. Wonderful person, wonderful writer, has a lot of readers. Got the award from the Guinness Book of Records for the most #1 New York Times bestsellers in the history of the world. And many, many others, sports figures, and I represent Barbara Streisand. In the entertainment side, Herbie Hancock, other people like that. On the entertainment side, athletes, not just politicians. Fiction, as I mentioned, the late Mary Higgins Clark, did a lot of books with her. It's a lot of fun, a lot of interesting people, and I love to read. So it's a good thing to get the chance to do.
And how did you decide to go the non-commission route? I'm now worried about all the money you left on the table, sir.
No, I leave a lot of money on the table. I think it's fair to charge as a lawyer charges for your time. I don't personally feel comfortable taking a percentage of my author's hard-earned money for writing books. Others do. That's fine. That's their business, and their clients make a judgment to pay that way. I just thought it was a fair way to charge, and so I've always done it that way with all my projects.
And are there other people who followed your footsteps, or
not to my knowledge? In my firm, I have a couple of wonderful partners, Michael O'Connor and Deneen Howell. They charge the same way. They have a lot of great clients, and they're stable too. But I'm not from. There may be others. I'm not familiar with it. I think almost all the people who do this work on a 15% commission.
Correct. That's how I know it. I just to make it clear, I'm not worried for you because I know you've done well, but I hope you're charging a lot per hour for this kind of work because it is so important. Can you tell us what is the record now for your clients?
You talk about advances?
Yeah, in the advanced category.
Never talk about a client's advances.
But I thought we were hearing some.
You've heard a lot of things, but that doesn't mean you've heard them from me.
So you will say that it was a record, but you won't say the amount. Is that correct?
No, it won't say record, won't say amount. Never, ever talk about my clients' advances. They wouldn't trust me if I did. That's for others to speculate on. And there's a lot of press reports about these things. Now, some of them are public figures, so they have to do disclosures. So in that case, the numbers come out over time. As you know, advances are paid periodically, so they don't necessarily get disclosed in one fell swoop, but they come out over time. Public figures who have to disclose them, that's one thing, but I never talk about the numbers. That's not why people come to me, and it's not what they expect from me.
Of course, I totally understand. We're going to try Rose one more time. Rose, let's see if we have you here. Hi, Rose. Hi. Thanks for joining us. We have a few more minutes with Mr. Barnett, and I know you have some questions, so I'll step aside so you can ask him.
I'm scared now. Is she going to hurt me?
You should be. You should be very afraid.
All right, I'm worried.
Yeah, I see you're worried.
Hi, Rose.
Hi. Well, tell us if we look, tell us historically how many elections. When do you think this election could go that we won't know the results?
We talked about that before you came on. My view is it could either be a blue wave, in which case it's over tomorrow night, or because of the many states that don't start counting early voting until tomorrow, and the many states who allow ballots to come in after election day, we could be in for many days. It's just hard to know. We'll know about this time tomorrow which path it is. Hard to know as we sit here today, the eve of, if you will.
And how big a chance, with your perspective, with so many elections, is there a chance for civil unrest?
I'm not the expert on that. I drove downtown Washington today, down 19th across L, if you know Washington, just almost completely boarded up. Tragedy, sad, scary. I hope it doesn't come to that. I think it would just be such a disservice to our country, to obviously the people who will be affected, the shopkeepers, the people who might get harmed. I hope it doesn't come to that. But if you look in Washington right now and you drive down 19th, or you drive through Georgetown, or you drive, oh goodness, around Black Lives Matter Plaza near the White House, everything is boarded up, including my law firm, in a 6-7 block area. So people are worried. I'm not an expert.
I think in New York too. I looked at pictures today. Bloomingdale's, Macy's, they're all
boarded up. Chevy Chase.
This has never happened in an election in my lifetime.
No, never. It's so sad. I hope it doesn't prove to be true.
And from your perspective, I'm created a hashtag called Woman to Follow, which is to amplify the voices of women in social media. So can you give us some perspective on what it was like to represent Geraldine Ferraro?
Sure. Well, I had the honor of representing the first woman on the ticket and the first woman on the top of the ticket. And I sadly concluded from both experiences that there's still a lot of bias in this country against women and against women candidates. I hate to say that because I'm the father of a daughter and the husband of a wife and the son of a mother, and but I still conclude that that exists, and it infects our process. I hope the day will come when that won't be the case. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, may she rest in peace, who was a friend, once said, I'm always asked, when will the Supreme Court be truly equal? And I say, when there's 9 women. And they say, you really mean that? And she said, well, there have been 9 men and nobody said anything about that. And
Exactly.
that's a true story, and I think a great story, not just about Ruth, but about this country.
Mm-hmm. Can you, let's see, reflect on the candidacy of Kamala Harris?
Oh, Kamala's been an amazing candidate. She was a great pick by Joe Biden. She's experienced before being a senator, experienced as a senator. She's been just a terrific campaigner. I thought she did extremely well in those debates and showed what she had to show, which is that she's qualified to be president if that day were to come. I'm very, very celebratory of her candidacy, and I think that it'll mean change and role model for a lot of young girls in this country and around the world, and that's a good thing.
Thank you. I agree. I think she did a great job.
I hope you do, or get off the show.
All right. You were when you started, you clerked for Chief Justice Byron.
No, Justice Byron White, yes.
Oh, yes. Can you
Now,
tell
here's
me?
an interesting fact.
Yes.
His hearing took 15 minutes. He was seated 9 days after he was appointed. It was a different time. And boy, has it changed.
And what made you go this route instead of, practicing, becoming another Chief Justice?
Me personally?
Yes.
Well, I've loved the practice of law. I have great respect for judges. I clerked for 2 of the greatest. I have many friends who are judges, but I like having clients. I like the advocacy. I like the disputes. I like the negotiations that are inherent in the practice. So for me, that was much more attractive, and nobody asked me to be a judge anyway. So not like I had to make a choice.
And when you were 10 years old, what did you want to become? Did you know then?
Shortstop for the Chicago White Sox. When I knew that wasn't in the cards, I always thought I was going to go back and be a high school English teacher, actually. I didn't have a grand plan. I just took it step by step. I went from high school to college to law school to clerking to the Hill to my law firm, and then I never left. I got stuck at the firm for 45 years, where I've had the blessing of a lot of diverse matters and clients and a lot of fun and a lot of interesting opportunities.
Thank you. So many great comments coming in here, and greetings to you.
You better tell me what they're saying.
No, hello on the way
getting
from work on the road
libels
to Montclair, New Jersey. Apollo joined us, as a speaker from Las Vegas. I want to ask you, what is a story about Las Vegas that you can share with us?
I actually love playing craps. I'll admit that. My limit's about like $50 or something. I'm a high roller. I had the interesting opportunity back early in my career of representing the then owners of Caesars. And after one of the board meetings, the owner said to me, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to go play some craps." And he just condemned me. He said, "Don't you realize you can't win? I thought you were smart. Why are you my lawyer?" And I learned a valuable lesson, which is never go beyond $50.
And craps is not a game that everybody will know internationally. So what attracted you?
Dice. You think of it as dice. If you know, a lot of people call it dice. It's too hard to explain. We'd be here for an hour and a half. But it's a fun game. And again, if you keep below $50, you can't win. There's no way to win. It's just the opportunity to play.
Well, one of the things I learned that Nate Silver said is that the chances of of Trump winning are the same as you rolling a 1 on a 6-sided die.
You saw Saturday Night Live. The guy rolled 1 to 3 times in a row on Saturday.
I did not see that. Is that true? Is that what happened?
You got to watch the skit. He did it.
Oh my
this
God.
Saturday. Oh yeah. Now, Sree,
Oh,
why
wow.
am I telling you this?
Yeah, you clearly have a lot. You're much more in tune with pop culture, politics, electoral information than
Sree,
I
I
am.
use a flip phone. That's how with it I am.
But you're not wasting your time with all this other stuff.
I believe that. I believe that to be true.
I'm
Can
going
you
to
talk about the newest deal? I understand you just made a deal with Hillary Clinton and Spielberg.
Oh yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, book called The Woman's Hour by Elaine Weiss. Not a book I worked on, but a great admirer of Elaine and her book. Hillary's teamed with Steven Spielberg, and we've sold the rights to Warner Brothers, and CW bought it. It's going to be a series. It's the story of the last state to ratify the amendment that gave women the right to vote. Amazing story of bribery and avarice and politics. And I recommend the book, and I think it's going to be a great series. Thanks for mentioning it. Steven Spielberg partnered with Hillary to put that. His company partnered with Hillary to make that deal, and I'm looking forward to the results. We also.
What was the state, by the way?
What's that?
Which was the last
state?
Tennessee.
We also had great fun a year ago putting James Patterson and Bill Clinton together to write The President is Missing, which was the #1 novel of 2018. Next year, we will be coming out with the second Bill Clinton, James Patterson book. It's called The President's Daughter, and we'll leave it at that. It is a terrific read.
All right. I'm going to just read a couple more of the comments here.
Sure.
Stephen says, I'm curious if Mr. Barnett has watched The Way I See It with Pete Souza. The director of it was a guest on our show. Don Porter was a guest on our show.
I haven't seen it, Stefan, but I'm a big admirer of Pete's, and I will see it, but I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard it's terrific.
And Sheena says, in your list of clients, you should mention Amanda Knox as well.
Yes, I represented Amanda after she came back from her unfortunate and unjustified prison term in Italy, and we did her book deal and a few other things, and she's now married and living in the Northwest and happily a free person. And the International Court of Justice actually ruled against Italy and gave her damages, proving once and for all that it was an unfounded charge and an unjustified conviction.
All right. Ellen says, this country does not want a woman as president today, 2020.
That's Ellen's view?
Yeah. I mean, she's saying this is how the country is misogynistic. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I told you earlier what I thought. I think there's still a strong inherent bias among some people that's unfair. And I hope the day will come when that is not the case, but it's certainly still a factor in our politics, as are other discriminations and prejudices. We could talk about that a lot. But right now we have the opportunity to elect a terrific woman as vice president, and I'm hoping for that.
I should also mention that one of my guests on our show was John Zaccaro Jr., the son of Geraldine Zaccaro, and he has some wonderful stories about that period of when that amazing summer when his mother ran.
And he and Laura and Donna, his sisters, were around all the time, got to know them. Jerry and I shared the same birthday, and every year when she was alive, we exchanged greetings on that day. And since she passed away, I always try to message the 3 kids and John Sr. and say happy birthday to the memory of that wonderful lady. And we share a birthday. And it happens to be, of all things, Women's Suffrage Day, too.
Oh, nice. Rose, go ahead. We only have a couple more minutes with Mr. Barnett.
I asked you before, who is the most nervous candidate you coached?
They're not nervous. By the time they get to that, I don't see any of them as nervous. They're anticipatory and they're excited, but I like to think they've all been well prepared and not nervous. I wouldn't say they're any nervous.
Was it different for Geraldine Ferraro as the first vice president woman?
Oh yeah. Well, as you and I have discussed, she had the aspirations of a whole lot of the women of America on her shoulders, and that's a heavy weight, being the first woman. But she acquitted herself so honorably and so well throughout that debate, and I was proud to be part of that first.
Awesome. I have to say, I watched the series, the Hillary series, and I thought it was really insightful.
Yeah, I actually had the fun of putting that together
Yes.
with the producers, and it just was a terrific 4-part series that started out as really just focused on the campaign, but became a real bio. And a lot of people who don't necessarily care for Hillary's politics, who are friends of mine, watched it and thought it was an amazing piece of documentary filmmaking. It captured that campaign. People are always interested in that, going all the way back to the war room about Clinton and Stephanopoulos and Carville in '92. This was a really wonderful examination of that campaign, but also of her life and her career. And I recommend it. It's on Hulu. I recommend it to anybody as they're staying at home at night with looking for something to do. It's a great opportunity to watch something good. Again, whatever you think of the politics, it's a great.
No, and I think I'm one of my friends who watched it with my daughter during the pandemic, and I think that people who know her now and didn't know who she was then, it's very illuminating to see what pioneer she was.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We only have a couple of minutes left here. Stefan asks a very non-political question, but an important question. So, Mr. Barnett, what is your favorite restaurant in Washington? And
wow, that's hard.
His is Jaleo, I think, owned by Chef Jose.
Yeah, I certainly know that one. We go to Cafe Milano. We go to Peacock Cafe. We go to Matisse. We go to Dumplings and Beyond. We go to, those are ones we go to a lot. Now, this is pandemic where we're doing mainly carry out. When the opportunity to go back indoors comes, we'll be going to a lot of different places that aren't necessarily right near where we live. But right now we're mainly doing carry out or outdoor dining when the weather permits. We're still not doing indoor.
And in terms of tomorrow, can you tell us what is your, like, do you have an election night ritual or a new ritual because of the pandemic? What are you going to be
put on
doing?
my pajamas and watch all the cables and all my clients and telling me what I need to know and hoping for the best. I think I mentioned to you, I've done 10 of these and won 4, lost 6. It's a lot more fun to win.
I certainly believe that. Sheena says Cafe Milano. I second that.
They have one of the best outdoor setups of anybody with the restaurant heaters and the little booths, and you feel really comfortable and safe there. And the people there are just wonderful, and so we enjoy going there. Want to try to patronize these restaurants, keep them alive, because so many have closed and will never come back. So we're trying to help our favorites. I can name you 10 others, but those are just a few that we try to go to.
Yeah, I can imagine that the restaurant business is such a big part of DC, right?
Yeah. Sheena, get Carl and come back to DC when the pandemic's over, please.
All right. So I have to ask you this. How do you maintain your amazing relationships on both sides of the aisle? Rarely do you see people who have business friendships at this level on both sides.
Well, when you go to a dentist to get your tooth pulled, you don't ask whether he or she is a Republican or a Democrat. You ask, can you pull my tooth? And I have found that it's the same way with legal services, that most people want someone who can do the job for them. I hope I am able and have proven that I'm able. And so they don't tend to care in the professional side whether I'm a Republican or a Democrat. I'm obviously transparent. Everybody knows who I've supported and who I've worked for, so nothing's being hidden. But I hope they come to me because they think I can perform the task, whether it be a negotiation or a litigation or an advocacy or a government investigation, whether our firm and my partners and associates and I are faced with. And so I've been able to do that, and that's a blessing because a lot of these people who I profoundly disagree with politically are friends, and it turns out they're really good people, and I enjoy arguing with them. But the purveyors of hate are not the ones that I tend to associate with.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm reading this book about Bill Campbell by Eric Schmidt, the former chairman of Google. And Bill Campbell was an amazing person who was the former director of marketing at Apple, and then went on to become a very successful CEO whisperer in Silicon Valley. And what I have a feeling you're like him in the sense that people came to you for your advice, and they didn't, it didn't matter whose side or whose interests. He always looked out for the interests of the people he worked with.
I was mentored by our founding partner, the late Edward Bennett Williams, who was probably the greatest lawyer of the 20th century. And he came to be known as the man to see. And I'm not that. I wouldn't flatter myself by saying I am. But some of the great lawyers, the Clark Cliffords, the Lloyd Cutlers, the Edward Bennett Williams, the names go on and on, Harry McPherson, they were people who could navigate through the corridors of Washington and help people with whatever problems they had, irrespective of their politics. And I aspire to that every day.
Well, we know that you've certainly achieved that, the ability to be the man to see, the man to get things done. Rose, a final comment or question?
How do you usually watch the debates? If tomorrow it's going to be in your pajamas.
In my pajamas, watching at home with my wife and switching around and seeing what the big boards say. And also, it's not just going to be presidential. I'm going to watch a lot of my friends who are in Senate races, friends who are in House races. A lot's going to be the success, if Biden is to win, will have a great dependency on how the Senate goes. So I'm going to be watching the whole picture, state legislatures, everything. Again, I don't know if we're going to know the results. People have to be patient. People have to understand that the laws of these states differ and they have to follow the laws, but it's going to be a fascinating night. And I just hope it's a peaceful night, all of us.
And in the days to follow, well, of course, I also have to ask you about the Senate and Congress and the House of Representatives. Where do you think that there's a chance that they could grab all three?
I think that the Democrats will increase their majority in the House. I think there's a really good chance that the Senate will flip. I think that there are a lot of tough races out there, but I think when you've got a Mark Kelly, Hickenlooper, Bullock, Cunningham, the names, I think there's a chance that those key 3-4 votes can flip. I really do, especially if it's a blue wave. There's some interesting races.
Sarah Gideon versus Susan Collins in Maine.
Yeah, that could go. That could be a flip, absolutely, because of her votes in the past year. So there are going to be some. Each one of those is a fascinating microcosm of American politics, American points of view, and the good and bad of America in 2020.
You're absolutely right. Sheena says you described yourself when you talked about great lawyers who people go to see. Ellen says down position races are so important.
I agree, Ellen. I agree. Absolutely.
And Stefan says, Mr. Barnett, thank you so much for sharing all of your incredible insight tonight. Be safe and be well. Let's hope for the best and that we can get back on track of the track of decency in this country with a new president.
Yeah. Thank you, Stefan and Rose and Sree. I hope we can do this again when we can look back on what happened as opposed to anticipating what might happen, because that will also be a fascinating discussion. Maybe I can be episode number 437 when I'm 98 years old.
Well, thank you so much. We'll hold you to it.
We will.
and everyone, tomorrow night, we'll be back to talk about the elections, and hopefully we'll have some idea where the results are. But we want to thank you very much, Mr. Barnett. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
And I'll say goodbye.
An honor.
Remember, send me a copy for this guy and Connor and Blair. Okay.
Yes, we will do that.
Don't let me down.
No, you will get that tonight. Thank you so much.
Good.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Stay safe.
Bye.